You were brought in by Tesla's special committee to advise it on corporate governance matter, including, and I'm quoting from Tesla's proxy here, satisfaction of fiduciary duties under Texas law. Take us to Texas law, Shane. How is that different versus Delaware, particularly when you're thinking about more predictable corporate governance framework, as it's said in the proxy?
No, absolutely. First of all, thank you very much for having me. It's a delight to see you again. With respect to Texas law versus Delaware, the one thing I do want to make clear for everyone is this pay package, which is actually a pay for performance. It's not a pay for promises. And that's one of the things I want to make clear. There are a lot of headlines right now, but this package as it's designed today actually works in Texas clearly, but it works in really every other state, including Delaware, as everyone talks about the differences. We can get into some of the details, but it really is a pay for performance package and not a pay for promises.
And some of those performances are interestingly around 1 million robots, 1 million robo-taxis. But actually, it's still about getting 20 million actual EVs on the road, Shane. How much was there a focus still in the bread and butter of what Tesla is, which is an EV maker?
Well, that's what it is today. And obviously, as everyone knows, and something that both Elon and the rest of the company and the board have talked about, they're at a critical inflection point today, moving from a traditional EV manufacturer into a world that's with AI, robotics, energy transformation. And as that Master Plan 4 clearly demonstrated, this is about sustainable abundance. And this was the right time to actually make this decision today. This is about timing and responsibility. It's certainly not reckless to make a decision today to keep the leadership and vision of Elon. And that's exactly what the board and obviously the special committee determined.
Professor Goodwin, the board addressed Musk's political activity and wrote in the proxy it had secured assurances that that activity would wind down. Taking into account the shareholder-initiated proposal to invest in XAI, the board appears prepared to allow Elon Musk to continue to have responsibility across a number of companies at the same time. How much was that discussed, the split focus as leader of a number of entities?
No, it's a great question. And look, this is not a new topic. Obviously, everyone has known that Elon's had a lot of other ventures and interest. When I say interest, before he even came to Tesla, he was at SpaceX. So this is not new. What I can tell you, and what I have observed myself, and this is something from being inside and watching it, the audit committee that has a related transaction oversight, as well as what the board and obviously the special committee thought through very extensively is, how do we harness everything that is great that Elon brings to the table? And then how can we actually work together as we move and transition Tesla from this EV manufacturer, which is a world class, and moving that now to an AI-focused robotics and energy sustainable abundance company. And so this is thought about very extensively, and it has actually been addressed throughout this whole process.
This committee, the board committee, met with Musk 10 times. And in the course of the 300 pages, a negotiation plays out, right? Where Musk is able to say, well, here are my terms. How atypical is that, given that the big package is atypical? And what did you advise the board on allowing Musk to come back and say, here is what I want in return for what you want?
Well, no, you're absolutely correct that there is definitely a negotiation that goes between a board and a CEO on any of these topics. And what informs my view and my decision is not just today as the executive director for our SMU's Corporate Governance Initiative. It was over 25 years of investment banking. I actually spent time in the boardrooms with these companies advising them on M&A transactions. Today, I'm also a board member. I'm also an investor, but more importantly, as wearing the hat as a professor and teacher, if you will, I actually teach on these topics all the time. And this is a very important topic that comes up as far as CEO compensation. How do you retain, motivate, and incentivize your management team to align with shareholder interests? And that's fundamental here. And that's exactly the process they undertook. What I can tell you is that they had discussions with Elon throughout the process, but any deliberations and any thoughtfulness that went in, including all the alternatives, now the alternatives were all detailed in the proxy, Those were all done within the special committee and then brought to the board. But it's a very typical process to have board members engage with their CEOs to understand what their vision is first, and that was very clear. We need to understand what the CEOs and management team's vision is, and then how do we align that to our shareholders?
Interestingly, of course, on the board is Elon Musk, his brother Kimball Musk too. They recused themselves when it came to putting forward this proxy to the investor base. But the 2018 pay package, it was challenged, it was overturned because of so-called conflicts of interest. What safeguards have you in this time, Shane, to push back on any cynicism around it?
Sure, and there are going to be some critics, to be sure, but this was actually thought about with, and addressed the 2018 Delaware considerations. This has a fully informed, disinterested special committee. Both Robin Denholm and Kathleen Wilson-Thompson were not only viewed as disinterested by the board when they formed the special committee, but McDermott, led by Wilson Chu and Joanna Lynn, actually conducted their own separate disinterested, and not only at the time of when this was occurred back in February, but everywhere through and up until today. And I've seen all the files and seen all the questionnaires. That is a very important point. The second point is that they acquired and engaged independent advisors. And what I mean by that are accounting firms, valuation firms, compensation companies, and then also, in the case for me, a governance to discuss about the implications around that. So this was thought through in contemplation what happened. It was a 7.5-month process. It did include, as you already talked about, Elon's vision, but he was excluded from all the deliberations.
Professor Goodwin, a question from our audience actually submitted to you, if I may. Across the operational and financial targets and requirements, why include the EBITDA goal? Were you involved in that?
I wasn't necessarily involved with certainly picking out any of the operational targets. That was the special committee working directly with the company. There needs to be an alignment, to be sure, between what operational goals and what that will actually translate on financial performance. But what is clear is there are market capitalization targets all the way up to $8.5 trillion, but also you have to meet operational targets as well. And obviously we talked about that. That includes robotics, and then also the target you mentioned about EBITDA. That's extremely critical to make sure there's an alignment between operational performance and also performance in the performance of the stock.
Shane, you advise on corporate governance, you sit on boards, you're also a teacher, a lecturer, a professor. How extraordinary is this one key pay package offering? Will you teach about it?
Well, I do think that the headlines obviously of $1 trillion catches the attention for sure. But what I would point out though is that maybe the headlines chase those numbers, but this plan chases results. And as I mentioned, there's no pay unless there's performance. So if there are no results, there are no votes, and there's no payout. So what I would point people to is to say this trillion, I would focus on $7.5 trillion of performance, that generation that the shareholders are going to receive, and obviously alignment for Elon Musk along the way, and the rest of the management team as well.